Okay, let me give the backstory. This thing all begins with Andrew Wilson confessing that he is a rapist in front of feminists' eyes, okay? Why? Because he confesses to doing marital rape, okay? He says that he wakes up his wife by putting his inside of her, okay? And his wife also admits to waking up Andrew Wilson with a all right. So, therefore, because there was no consent given or whatever, okay, and I don't know whether or not there's any discussion, there's no other context that was basically given, Andrew Wilson says, well, according to your point of view, I guess I am graping her, okay? So, if you're a feminist, he is a rapist. Simple as, all right? Now, somebody named Tilly, okay, who did not debate him, okay, called him a rapist, okay? Because by my definition, your definition, and everyone's definition, he is a rapist, okay? Because he commits marital rape, okay? Not the fruit, the other Title IX kind, okay? So then, lo and behold, Andrew Wilson becomes pissy because he doesn't like it when poor old Andrew Wilson gets called a rapist. Boo-hoo, very sad, all right? Suck it up, okay? So turns out Andrew Wilson doesn't like it when he is being called a rapist, even though he literally confesses to being a rapist. Okay, retard. So now he is threatening to sue Tilly, okay? So this woman, who rightfully so calls him a rapist, he's threatening to sue her, okay? Even though from her perspective, it totally makes sense. Are we clear? And now here is Tilly's response to that threat. Basically, his threat was apologize in public or get sued. And lo and behold, Tilly released this video 11 hours ago, okay? Apologizing to Andrew Wilson. And also, Destiny said that he would pledge his support, his monetary support for Tilly if Andrew Wilson did end up suing her.
Attitude issues.
It's implied consent when you get married. It's implied that you're consenting to sex.
He feels like we're on the same level.
She does sometimes. She's like,
I don't.
She's like, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. And she's like, okay. I know. Yeah. She's like she can't believe this is happening. I've really shocked her.
I'm really respectful. I'm very
My apologies to everyone's ears. I'm sorry that your eardrums had to get violated just now, okay?
very submissive.
Respect and submission is different than obey.
What do you
What's your
mean by
definition?
Well, obeyance is I do it when I say to do something, you do it. And if I make a decision that you disagree with, ultimately I have the final say, and you don't have one.
Well, your wife has to abide by that?
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like I'm punching above my weight a little bit being married to this guy, but
What is the purpose of waking her up with your penis?
Because I think it's hilarious and it feels great.
don't feel sorry for me. I'm doing just fine.
I just assume it's fine.
We have 4 daughters. He's a great dad. Super nice dad.
What's with the sound in the background? Why is there so much
Really,
sound?
really caring.
When somebody hits you, you have to hit them back harder. That's the way it generally seems to work, unfortunately. Now, if you had behaved yourself as a good girl, I wouldn't have had.
So you just assume consent.
From my wife? Yes. I completely stand behind this.
No, I feel sorry for her. No. I do not feel sorry for Rachel Wilson in any way whatsoever. Rachel Wilson is very public. She puts down other women. She readily claims and submits herself to Andrew, okay? She says that she is literally inferior to Andrew, okay? She also debates, ironically enough, okay, which is contradictory to knowing her place as a woman at home, all right? She also debates, and she goes around spewing vile TradCon propaganda, okay? So, therefore, okay, fuck that motherfucker, okay? All right? I hope they both burn in hell. Anyway, let's return to the video.
This is not trolling.
The social order is not meant to be that we must cater to women's feelings and that women have to be okay with how things are said and they have to approve and we have to convince them and we have to pull them over to our side.
Protection of your rights, even inside of your home, actually are deferred to the man. And so, yeah, you should probably listen to him. It's probably a good idea. Well, I don't know about master. Like, you call a judge your honor.
Men, then women, then children. The men parse out the truth, they write the laws, they enforce the laws, they run society. The women can have their opinions all day, but it doesn't mean that anybody has to give a about them. And everybody always gets upset with Andrew because he rates me a 6. And I'm like, I think he's giving me just a hair more than I deserve, but
You're fine saying that you've raped your wife?
Yeah, if you think that me rolling over in the morning and she's asleep and waking her
It's one thing to hear this shit come out of a man's mouth, but it's a whole other level of ick when a woman talks that way. Dude, okay, anybody would agree with me that a black person who's like essentially Uncle Ruckus from the Boondocks is more harmful towards black people than a white person who says the hard R towards black people, right? Because one is a victimizer, the other is a self-victimizer and a traitor, okay? Rachel Wilson is a traitor. Rachel Wilson is Uncle Ruckus, okay? Like, she literally is. Anyway.
Up with sex is great.
Well, I mean,
That's like a black person saying, Yahoo, brother, I love being a slave. I love being a hard R. Yeah, what the fuck? Why shouldn't you hate that motherfucker?
she's unconscious. If she had too much to drink and passed out.
Yeah, we've done that too when we're both drunk. Yeah.
Well, I mean, where she passed out.
Like, brother, you're filthy. I spit on you. Okay, that's it. Okay, I spit upon you, okay, because you are not worthy of my attention. You're a sickness. You okay. All right. I'm calm now.
Yeah.
So this motherfucker Tilly is hot as shit, okay? She is hot. She's sexy. Oh my god. My queen. Please slay Andrew in the marketplace of ideas. Go.
Hi, Andrew. What you're about to witness is not a moral case refuting your disturbed understanding of so-called Christian ethics. It is a legal...
Okay, listen, okay? Tilly is better looking than Andrew. No more needs to be said, okay? All right?
Realistic one.
Good-looking people are never wrong, okay? Why is it that always the sweetest women are always the most beautiful, okay? And also the most correct, okay? Why? That's why, okay? All right, I'm not talking about Tilly in specifically, okay? Okay, all right, okay. I'm going to stop before it gets weird, okay?
And nothing more. This is important for you to understand. For around a year, you've made repeated attempts to drag me into a gender-based harassment project called the Whatever Podcast. Initially by reaching out directly, followed by a video designed to provoke a response, and now, finally, with an intimidation attempt where you branded me that terrifying bogeyman your henchmen get so riled up about, a false accuser. All of this is, of course, because I pride myself on refusing to get my hands dirty by declining in no uncertain terms upwards of 7 hours of male aggression captured on video on the other side of the world. Let me make myself clear.
You think Lav is hot? Lav is actually hot. But she's evil. Okay, maybe not all pretty people are good people.
This is because I am above that. Not because I cast judgment on women who attend, but because all women are above that. And I will encourage every woman in my audience to think the same of herself. If that makes me a diva, Brian, I'm very happy to co-opt the label. What I'm about to do here is something much narrower and much more necessary than an ethical debate with you on something so archaic that most people aren't interested in taking a second look. I'm simply instead going to explain the law. Because when people make public statements about sexual conduct within marriage, about whether consent exists between spouses at all, or whether certain acts qualify as under modern legal definitions, I won't avoid commentary on that, even in the face of a hate campaign that brands me a liar who stages abuse allegations against men to ruin their lives. That framing is defamatory, not mine. This video is an exercise in laying out the law for a man and a community who need to hear it. To those men, please feel free to campaign for a reversal of those laws. I'll meet you on the opposite side of the rally face to face, because my rights are not granted to me. They are taken by me. They ontologically belong to me. And I will speak to girls directly before I address you, Andrew, for the simple reason that they are more important than you will ever be. To my sisters, my friends, my followers, and to women everywhere. This man and his community are dangerous outliers. Any reasonable man, any man who is worth your time is nothing like him. Do not entertain them, do not perform for them, do not fight on their turf. Fight them on your ground, fight them on the ground we're gaining, and do what they hate most, say no. But of course, this video isn't a moral defense of women's rights. It's a reminder of pre-existing legal precedent. So let's put this fight aside for now, and start with the 2003 Sexual Offences Act. Under Section 1 of that Act, a person commits 3 elements are satisfied. First, the person intentionally another person's or mouth with their. Second, the other person does not consent to that. Third, the person does not reasonably believe that the other person consents. Those three elements together form the legal structure of the offence. What is equally important for the
I like this woman's cadence. It's the British accent, okay? Whether or not it's on David Attenborough or like any other, or M, okay, from James Bond or James Bond himself, all right? It just gives people an air of authority, all right? That's just what British accents do, okay? It's white.
purposes of this discussion is what the statute does not say. The statute contains no exception for marriage. There is no clause stating that spouses automatically consent to sexual activity with one another. There is no legal doctrine within modern English law that treats marriage as permanent or implied sexual permission. Consent must exist for each act of sexual activity. That principle is foundational within contemporary English criminal law. Historically, English law did contain what we called the marital exemption. This doctrine originated centuries ago, and it was based on the idea that a wife gave irrevocable, irretractable consent to sexual relations upon entering marriage. That doctrine was abolished in 1991 in the landmark House of Lords case RVR. In that case, the court ruled that the marital exemption was outdated and incompatible with modern legal principles of autonomy, equality, and bodily integrity. If you spent some time in the manosphere, those words might sound like a foreign language by now. But rest assured, Andrew, they're not going anywhere. The ruling made clear that a husband can be guilty of raping his wife under the same legal framework that applies to any other person. It meant that marriage was no longer a defense to rape, and that principle has been firmly established in UK law for more than 30 years. In fact, the US abolished the same exemption state by state not long after. This is awkward for obvious reasons. I can quote you directly as stating the supposed extremist nature of modern consent laws in a debate you partook.
Oh no, guys, it's cooked, okay? She knows more about laws than Pisco. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Sorry, that was a joke, okay?
Took in 3 years ago against Rob Noah, a position you long continue to hold, which states a good wife should keep to her vow of unconditional consent. This is a coercive and controlling belief. On the subject of marital laws, you asserted the following, quote, "You claim extremism, but the extremism is the other direction. You claim that it's extreme to hold people to their oaths, that it's extreme for you if your wife says that we are of one flesh, of one mind under God. I think the extreme part is that you think that that oath can just be arbitrarily broken whenever they feel like breaking it." In the 18-minute video posted to your podcast channel, in which you describe a, quote, implied consent in marriage, you also reinforce this legally obsolete personal opinion. The next step here is understanding what the law means when it refers to consent itself. Section 74 of the Sexual Offences Act provides the statutory definition. The Act states that a person consents if they agree by choice and have both the freedom and the capacity to make that choice. Two elements are therefore required: agreement by choice and the capacity to choose.
There you go. I mean, this is pretty much what I think how consent should work, okay? This is, I mean, colloquially speaking, okay, like if we're not talking about like, if we're not talking about like written law, I'm specifically talking about what is typically regarded as informed consent, which means that not only is consent being given, which is a yes or no, but informed, meaning this person has the capacity to give consent, right? That's what informed consent means. That she's just basically talking about that, whatever, right? These are pretty basic concepts that really, in an ideal world, there should be no need to explain this, okay? Like, these are really obvious things, okay? Like, in an ideal world, there should be no need to explain any of this, all right? But I think the people from the manosphere are just a bunch of babies, okay? Like, there's really just nothing else to say about
If
that.
either of those elements are missing,
in fact, I think it might be a crime to sleep with men from the manosphere because they clearly have a very underage understanding, okay, of sex, all right, and relationship dynamics.
the law considers the act non-consensual. Now, this definition deliberately focuses.
Stop. And then she doesn't really want.
Pearl Man, thank you so much for the $5. Yeah, you guys can clearly see I've made that my my dono sounds.
This is on autonomy. It requires that the person involved is able to make a meaningful decision at the time that the act occurs. Situations involving sleep or unconsciousness are particularly important in the law of consent, with Section 75 of the Sexual Offences Act establishing evidential presumptions in circumstances where a person cannot communicate consent. And, well, you guessed it, one of the circumstances explicitly listed is where the complainant was asleep or otherwise unconscious. The legal logic here is really straightforward. A person who is asleep or unconscious due to intoxication cannot actively make a choice. If someone lacks the capacity to choose, the statutory definition of consent under Section 74 cannot be satisfied. For that reason, courts treat sexual activity initiated while a person is asleep, let alone passed out due to alcohol consumption, as raising serious legal questions about whether genuine consent existed at the time of the act. You have proudly admitted to having sex with your wife while she is asleep or unconscious due to alcohol consumption. Let me reiterate this one more time to make it perfectly clear. Section 74 defines consent as a choice made with freedom and capacity. Section 75 explicitly states that capacity is presumed
Is that British lady that debated Destiny once? On what, specifically?
absent when a person is unconscious, unless proven otherwise. And Andrew, you have stated on the record that you have sex with your wife while she is passed out drunk because of your belief in implied consent. This is where your theology crashes into the statute. The law does not recognize implied consent as a rebuttal to unconsciousness. In fact, it presumes the opposite. Hence, based on the statements you have made publicly,
I'm trying to find it, no promises. Yeah, but like I probably won't watch it, so you can just tell me what it was about. That's it.
in your own words, on your own platforms, the conduct you described, if accurately described by you, would satisfy the elements of a Section 1 offence under the Sexual Offences Act 2003. I'm not asserting that you committed a criminal offence, nor am I asserting that you would be convicted. I'm saying
What she's saying is that you confessed to it, motherfucker. Okay, you dumb fuck. You absolute fucking buffoon. Okay, what she's saying is that you confessed to it. All right. You're guilty. 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 You're guilty.
that a reasonable person applying the statutory definition to the conduct that you describe in your videos could reasonably reach that conclusion. An argument sometimes raised is that if partners discuss the sexual act beforehand, for example, the night before, that discussion then automatically resolves the question of consent. Courts consequently examine whether the defendant could reasonably believe that consent existed at the time of the act. Where someone is unconscious and unable to communicate, establishing that reasonable belief becomes significantly more difficult because consent is about one's ability to refuse. How a situation is described therefore becomes legally pivotal. If a person explains that they initiate sexual activity with a sleeping or unconscious partner because of outdated presumptions regarding marriage, or because they enjoy the surprise or shock reaction that follows, that they find it, quote, hilarious, which you did, Andrew, in whatever debate number 11, followed by the statement, quote, I 100% stand by this is not trolling, end quote, it says something pivotal. It says that the act that you described, as you described it, was about power and even humiliation, not just sex. The description suggests that the initiating person expects.
Ooh. I did not expect there to be an additional layer. I did not expect there to be like a fucking subtext to British law concerning the definition of grape. As in like, oh, there has to be some like humiliation factor, right? There has to be some humiliation factor. There has to be some degree of dehumanization or something. Okay, that makes sense in that case because that is what grape is about. Which, I mean, in terms of Andrew, like he is the master dehumanizer, okay, if anything. Okay, he's talented. He's absolutely talented in dehumanizing people. So, this is Sati Bakana, okay, or
the other
Sati
party
Bakana,
to be
okay.
unaware of and even avoidant of the act. You reinforce your incorrect perception of consent once again when at 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Bro, Tilly is absolutely fucking cooking the ever-loving shit out of Andrew Wilson right now. This is a cook.
Of the video titled, Andrew Wilson is accused of attacking his wife by radical feminist. You wrongly state, quote, there's an implied consent when you get married. It's implied that you're consenting to sex. At 17 minutes and 50 seconds of the video, the feminist in question states very reasonably that, quote, I think when we're talking about sexual experiences, consent is definitely the foundation in terms of you're not only considering your experience, but you're also considering your partner's. You respond with, quote, no, I'm just considering mine, like I just want to have a good time. Statements describing pain, surprise, or shock, followed by a resigned okay, which occurs at minute 15, are the cherry on top of one of the creepiest interactions I've ever seen. You're not even trying to frame your interactions as acceptable kink. You're relying on Christian.
She's already hosting her own fucking court case. She's already hosting her own fucking court case at this point. Like, she went through all the laws and like the fucking statutes and shit, and she's like, no, I got this. What the okay, all right.
Orthodoxy as a foundation, which has always been at odds with that community for good reason. As much as you might try to suggest, you are in actuality not an expert in the grey areas one bit, which I know because your own words make that absolutely clear. In fact, let's take a look at a few of them now via Twitter. Quote, slipping off a condom during sex isn't or even
oh my god, there are even more receipts. It's over. It's over. There's even more receipts. There's even more receipts.
Close, 6th of February 2022. Quote, if taking off a condom stealthily during sex is putting a condom on stealthily during sex 4th of February 2022. Quote, he insisted that they have sex or he wouldn't be with her. It's the opposite of 24th of October 2024. Quote, intoxication isn't relevant. What does coercion mean in this sense? He asked a bunch of times. So what? 9th of January 2023. And finally, quote, why get mad when I call my wife my property? That's right, I own her. She belongs to me. I won't share her. I won't give her away. I won't let other people steal her. I won't let people damage her. And I make sure she is maintained. Women must treat their things poorly to be offended. 19th of January 2025.
Yeah, okay, so he supports sex slavery.
If someone consented to sex with a condom, stealthing does amount to under English law. Under the Serious Crime Act 2015, coercive or controlling behaviour is also a criminal offence. Well, I can't charge you with a crime. Showing a pattern of ownership language provides the necessary context for why a reasonable person would recognise your views on consent as part of a larger, more dangerous worldview. And all of the above statements, both in and outside of their full context, intersect directly with the legal framework surrounding consent. I mean, I've linked the videos referenced in the description of this video, just in case of skepticism, and viewers can of course search for the tweets themselves. But in short, it doesn't matter that you say your wife consented, or even if she says she did, if there exists a wealth of statements that don't reflect current legal precedent. And my commentary based on those statements are therefore based on what had already been disclosed. But people do often confuse whether conduct meets the legal definition of an offence with whether a criminal conviction would realistically occur. Those are not the same question. Courts regularly examine situations where one party describes conduct in a particular way, but the legal definition of the act raises questions about whether it constitutes an offence, especially in a domestic violence or coercive control context. In my home country, the police
Andrew has the body of a 40-something lardass who has to OD on Viagra to get his mummified baby carrot up, but his mental maturity never grew past the retarded 9th grader in the 90s who thought typing 80,085 in the calculator was funny. Okay. Did Andrew actually sue her? No, he threatened to sue her, okay? If there's no apology, then he will sue her. That is essentially Andrew's that is Andrew's threat, okay?
Often become particularly concerned when wives seem to hold steadfast to the belief that her husband is entitled to her.
I'm sure Destiny has said this to Andrew before. Wait, Destiny has said this to Andrew? Or Andrew said this to Destiny? Which one is it? But also, yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing. If Andrew Wilson doesn't end up suing her, then I'm just going to say no balls, all right? No balls, okay? Because, like, that's it. You just have no balls.
Her body at all times. But regardless, if someone described conduct that met the legal elements of an assault, such as having sex with someone who is intoxicated to the point of unconsciousness, due to a marital consent doctrine underlied by a clear belief in female obedience to male power, then the fact that the victim said they personally did not mind would not change a reasonable person's understanding of the description itself, nor would it insulate you from commentary, even though criminal convictions were not pursued. Because when someone posts statements on a public platform that are likely to flout legal standards on the basis of Christian moral opinion, I am ultimately well armed when I advocate on behalf of what the law actually means for wives, whether you disagree with me or not. In other words, a lack of prosecution against you, Andrew, by your benevolent wife, whose beliefs surrounding consent are severely legally outdated, who believes consent can be, quote, irretractable, does not mean the legal framework is irrelevant or incorrect. And it doesn't mean I defamed you. I can even quote you as understanding this basic premise perfectly, when it isn't about sex with your wife. When you recently tweeted only a few days ago, quote, on clavicular getting smacked, the defense seems to be she asked if she could slap him and he said yes, so there is no crime. If I ask to shoot you and you say yes and I do, is there no crime? One of the replies to your tweet kind of sums it up. Quote, it makes you
Needs to fix her audio setup. I don't know if it needs fixing. The room gives her echoing, okay, a sense of aura, okay? There's aura in this voice, okay?
You wonder if there are things that adults can't consent to, and if so, where's the line? Because I'd say yes, one can agree to be slapped and it's not a crime, but one cannot agree to be shot and it not to be a crime. The assumption being that a mentally healthy person would not agree to be shot without some rational reason. So they must not be mentally healthy, making it exploitative by the other person. It's food for thought, but I digress. Explaining how your belief system surrounding consent relates to a troubling rejection of what defines under UK law, as is my right as a commentator, is not the same thing as claiming a criminal conviction ever would or did occur. Those are two different assertions. Recognizing that distinction is essential if we want to discuss the law accurately.
Bishop's crush on Brits confirmed? No, I don't have a thing specifically for British people.
Rather than emotionally. But I understand we have a cross-border problem. You're American, I'm British, it happens. So I'll go out of my way to emphasize a key point that exists in UK criminal law. Victims here don't have to see themselves as victims in order for a charge to happen. In England and Wales, prosecution decisions are made by the CPS, not by complainants. In the UK, the police investigate, the case is passed to the Crown Prosecution Service, and then
I just don't see how Andrew has a case, right? Like, assuming that all of this is true and, you know, these laws actually do make sense on why these are laws in the first place and blah, 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 blah. I just don't see how Andrew has a case. Like, this is 100% saber rattling, right? There's no way he's going to sue her, okay? If he does sue her, I'll be shocked, okay? Like, I will be shocked. I think what's going to happen is that Andrew is going to go radio silent on this issue and never talk about it ever again, okay? And he's going to pretend that Tilly doesn't exist or something. I don't know. Because, yeah, I don't know. This is just, like, very embarrassing for Andrew. I think that this is a, this is just a very, I don't know. Like, this entire thing just seems like a very embarrassing attempt for Andrew to, like, paint himself as someone who is, like, manly, but ultimately is floundering and struggles to get a grasp on laws and fighting on Tilly's own home turf and like and shit, right? Like, it's just embarrassing. Like, I think it's embarrassing. I just think it's embarrassing. But
then the CPS decides whether to prosecute. This means in practice that even if someone says they don't want charges, the CPS can still prosecute if there is enough evidence.
Okay, what she means here, I'm assuming, is that she's saying that even if Rachel Wilson doesn't see herself as a victim, that does not mean that under the laws of the UK, that Andrew Wilson would not be seen as guilty of grape. All right, meaning that even if Rachel Wilson protects Andrew Wilson and corroborates and doesn't press any charges, that has no standing, because if the prosecutor sees that, or if the judge or whatever the fuck sees that as something that is actually worth prosecuting, then the victim's opinion does not matter, because the facts of the case paint something different, and a victim's mentality, right, could entirely be fucked in this instance, and they don't have to be reliable. right? Which I'm assuming why we have stuff like interrogations or cross-examination or making sure, the story is consistent, right? Because or like isolating the two people and making sure that the story is straight, right? I'm assuming like that kind of stuff happens in order to establish like whether or not like the victim is being ordered to cover up for the perpetrator. Yeah, that can entirely be the case as well. But
And if it is in the public interest, this happens fairly often, actually, in domestic abuse cases. The victim's cooperation can indeed affect how strong the case is against her alleged attacker, but it does not legally prevent investigation or prosecution. Of course, this isn't primarily about what decisions Rachel may or may not make. I'm making a broader legal point that the way that reasonable people interpret criminal law
also she's specifically talking about Tilly is specifically talking about whether or not Andrew Wilson could be legally classified as a rapist under UK law, but the truth of the matter is whether or not what Tilly has said can be classified for defamation, right? As in, like, she hates Andrew with enough passion to the point where she would be inclined to make up a lie about Andrew in order to smear his reputation on purpose, right? Or something is being so clear as to which that is the case, in which like I can and Andrew has to prove. Andrew, I think at least when it comes to defamation in the United States, generally speaking, defamation also you have to prove that you actually did suffer damages, right? Because essentially when you're suing for defamation, you're suing for damages that you feel like need to be earned back, okay? Because people think that, oh well, like I can just sue for defamation anytime I want because I think that, this like makes me look bad or whatever the fuck, or I think that this makes me look bad. Okay. That's wrong. Okay. What defamation is supposed to be for? Defamation is specifically supposed to be for, you already have a loss. Okay. You already have suffered some form of loss that can be directly attributable to some reputation smear that the other person has made, and you can prove it, right? For example, you have if your mental health has been attacked, then you can show the records of you attending therapy because of something that this person has done, right? This person has smeared your reputation and you've been so traumatized by the whole experience to the point where you had to go to therapy and get on medication because of it, right? So your therapist would then have to write letters and corroborate in court that yes, indeed, this is true under laws, right? That yes, this person did seek me out specifically because of this reputational damage, right? So this is why the threshold for proving defamation is so absurdly high. Okay, the threshold for proving defamation is so high because it can be easily abused otherwise. All right, because you don't want a case, obviously, with someone just suing somebody for just simply something that other person said. Right, you have to prove that there is actual material damage that is essentially being dealt out. Right, so in terms of Andrew Wilson, okay. If he doesn't even believe that mental health is like a big thing, if he doesn't even believe in therapy because that's like a liberal idea, I'm assuming, then he automatically has lost that ground. Because I feel as though like because he's not going to seek out any help or therapy or anything like that, he at least cannot prove the case in that direction. At the very least, he cannot prove that case. Okay. In addition, in terms of material harm, he has to show something like, oh, well, my concurrent viewership numbers started dropping, okay, after Tilly made this statement. Oh, Tilly made a statement on a platform big enough as to affect my subscriber count, as to affect my what. You have to show that. You have to show that number. Okay, you have to show that number. Okay, if you cannot show that number, then like you're doing a piss poor job at showing that, oh well, I have actually been defamed, right? So this is essentially what Andrew Wilson has to do. Okay, I'm assuming. Okay, like at least this is the case generally speaking. Okay, because state laws could vary for defamation cases here in the United States. Okay, now for UK law, I have no idea. Okay, like they could do things entirely different in the UK. I have no idea. All right. But I'm assuming that generally they are similar, but there are some significant differences, but they don't deviate off of one another too much. Okay, that's my assumption. This is my assumption for defamation laws in the UK. Okay. Also, editors, clip this. Thank you. It might even be tougher in the US because he is a public figure. Yeah, and I don't know, like you can talk a lot more smack about public figures because they're the ones that put themselves out there, okay? Because you are the one putting yourself out there. I just don't know, you know? The UK laws are easier to win defamation, yeah, but how much easier, right? And yeah, like if you have a shit case, then you're still not winning the case, right? Even if you're like you have some path that would make you win the case easier, right?
Does not have to relate to the private beliefs or preferences of the people involved. In several areas of the law, but especially when it pertains to domestic abuse, coercive control, and sexual offences.
If he sues in US, can she just not show? Well, it just wouldn't apply in any sense, right? State-wise, dude, she's British, okay? British, okay, she's British. So just to be very clear, all right, United States, like, yeah, like it doesn't apply in any way. Like you have to sue her in the UK, okay? You have to sue someone on their own like turf. You have to, okay? Like you can't, yeah, you can't do that. There's no such thing as that. Yeah. Title says Millie, isn't it Tilly? Fuck me. Sorry, my bad. But yeah. Oh shit, did I actually call her Tilly? Fuck me. I mean Millie? Rip. Who would have been a better present? What? Okay, anyway. But she is laying out why his case is crap. Yeah, correct.
The state applies objective legal standards, even when the individuals involved.
Like, honestly, if anything, I feel like Tilly is doing Andrew Wilson a solid, okay? Because if you're laying out, if you're laying it out on why this case would not work, right? I mean, that's on Andrew Wilson, right? Like, this is basically a warning. This is like a warning shot to Andrew saying that you're going to waste your time and money if you pursue this, okay? And not only that, like I might countersue and earn even more money back, right? For wasting my time at the very least, right? So like, I'm assuming that this is what this video is for, right? It's essentially saying you have no case. I'm giving you a chance to back off gracefully, right?
Involved say everything is fine. In grooming cases, for example, a victim may appear to agree to what is happening. They may even articulate that agreement, but the law looks beyond that surface to the surrounding dynamics like dependency, manipulation, and the gradual normalization of behavior that would otherwise be resisted. I mean, the point is simple. Apparent acceptance does not settle the question of consent. Where there is a structured imbalance of power or a pattern of coercive influence, the law is willing to say that what looks like agreement is not, in fact, freely given consent at all. So even if two people personally believe that a certain practice is okay, such as the idea that marriage implies sexual consent forever, us as commentators are still permitted to evaluate the situation using the statutory definition. The law does not change simply because two individuals privately interpret it differently. The law does not give a fuck that you're a Christian nationalist. The law exists precisely because it is an enforcement.
Bro, and honestly, she should call it out like this, okay? If you say that you're like, you describe yourself proudly as a Christian nationalist, fine, okay? Then you deserve to be laughed at. Because it's kind of like saying that you're otherkin on Tumblr, right? Like, you say that you're a cat, you say that you're a wolf, but we can all see that you're a human. Right? Like you say that you're a spirit animal, like you have like some like, oh, well, like the law doesn't give a fuck about you seeing yourself as an animal, all right? The law interprets you as a human being. Your own interpretation of the matter does not matter, okay? Unless you have already been sentenced and maybe you can be granted leniency because you didn't view yourself as that way. Like if you define yourself as otherkin, right? You define yourself as a wolf and you go on to bite another human being, right? Because you're like trying to express wolf-like behaviors, all right? When the law comes in and you get sent to court for physical assault, right? The law isn't just going to go, well, it's because you're a wolf and so therefore that's within your nature, right? They're going to go, wait a second, you're a human being, okay, who is deluded enough to think that they're a wolf, but you still physically assaulted another human being. So therefore, you're still committing a crime here, right? You are still doing something wrong. You're doing like assault and battery, right? Or whatever the fuck, okay? Right? Like it isn't exactly. So this Christian nationalist label is a LARP. It's a LARP, okay? It's like playing out your character in D&D, okay? You're doing your childlike. You're doing a childlike LARP of like, yeah, like, I mean, if you're gonna sue somebody, then welcome to the big boy like battlefield, okay? Like, if you're gonna sue somebody, then you better take it seriously, okay? Whether like your opinions as a Christian nationalist does not matter, okay? Nobody takes that seriously, okay? You're a laughingstock, okay? You call yourself a Christian nationalist, you're a laughingstock, all right? You look ridiculous. You look silly, okay? Grow up, right?
Mechanism for clear boundaries that cannot be altered by private indoctrination. I mean, I'm guiding you to the inevitable here, Andrew. Unfortunately for you, it's a clear-cut case that people who publicly describe behavior that interacts with legal boundaries are going to meet someone like me one day who can't be intimidated with a legal threat, which is bound to crash and burn. I'm just one of many listeners who evaluated the statements that you posted to the internet using the legislative framework that exists in my country. That is the basis on which I made my comments. The same principles that I outlined so far apply in multiple intersecting fields too. In contract law, agreements must relate to specific terms and specific transactions. Agreeing to sell one item does not imply.
I'm putting it together. The threat to sue her is all part of his rapist behavior. It's another form of trying to intimidate and humiliate women. It's something Andrew gets off to, which ironically enough, okay, Andrew like exhibits more toxic femininity behavior than a lot of the women that he will debate, okay? He gossips, he trades dirt behind the scenes, he giggles and laughs whenever he's nervous and he doesn't know what to say, or he tries to feign he tries to feign victory. He tries to pretend that he's already won, blah blah blah, right? Like these are all like very effeminate behaviors at the end of the day, right? So ironically enough, like he like it like every single time he goes on to blame another woman for exhibiting like female traits, like he is the one that maxes out on all of these female traits, okay, like that he espouses. It almost comes off as projection and self-hatred to me. But you know what, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not Freud, okay? That's just my interpretation of what I see, okay?
Consent to sell future items. Agreeing to a contract today does not automatically bind someone to future unrelated agreements. In tort law, the defensive consent.
I wouldn't even be surprised if all the prominent red pillars had like mommy issues. Okay, like you just don't have a good relationship with your mom. All right. Oh my God. I wish. You know what? I wish Freud was still alive. Okay, and didn't die from mouth cancer. Okay.
Consent to risk is similarly limited. If someone consents to one risk in one situation, that consent cannot be expanded beyond the specific context in which it was given. Consent is bounded and it's contextual. One of the clearest parallels comes from medical law itself, despite your disturbing tweets suggesting otherwise. In Montgomery v. Lanarkshire Health Board, the UK Supreme Court emphasised that patients have to give informed consent to specific medical procedures, which means doctors cannot rely on general permission or assumed agreement, or even previous discussions that did not cover the exact procedure performed. Consent has to be informed, specific, has to be given in relation to the particular act. Again, the law rejects the idea that general permission carries forward indefinitely. But medical law isn't quite the same. I will grant you that. It actually operates under a slightly different model. And that's because medical consent is procedural, purpose-bound, and professionally regulated. Sexual consent, unlike medical consent, must exist at the time of the act. It must involve capacity in the moment itself, and it cannot be assumed on the basis of marital status or permanently granted. Why? Precisely because medicine is documented and under constant regulation, and sex is none of those things. It is exactly because sexual activity lacks institutional safeguards that UK law requires clear consent at the moment that the act occurs, which means you need at all times to possess the ability to say no. So too in property law, permission to enter land is limited, just like your permission to enter a woman. I think it will further aid your comprehension, in fact, if I list some specific examples of events that...
Tilly, he's already dead, okay? You don't need to go this far, all right? Like Andrew Wilson, when it comes to debating on substance, has nothing. Okay, like he has like reading comprehension issues. Okay, 100%. All right, like he probably won't even read like more than half of the things that you're like saying right now. Okay, like the fact that he already confesses to it, like in the view of and the fact that he admits that he would be a rapist is already enough. Okay, you don't need to go this far. All right. I'm already convinced, okay? Like he has essentially made all the arguments already for himself, okay? He has essentially dug his own grave. I've never seen anybody dig himself further than anybody like Andrew Wilson, okay? He doubles down, triples down, thinks it's epic and funny, all right, until it actually begins to slap him in the face, okay? It's like memeing like close to the sun and then you falling into the sun.
May or may not describe as defined in English law, which might relate to statements you have made in the past. This is a game. You can play along with it. Simply shout out yes or no before I reveal the answer. Number 1. A man and a woman both get drunk and agree to have sex. However, once the woman arrives at the man's house, she falls unconscious due to her intoxicated state. The man has sex with her anyway. Ready with your answer? It's yes. Under English law, this is considered because the woman's intoxicated.
Holy moly. Really? Hold on.
The answer. Law, which might relate to statements you have made in the past. This is a game. You can play along with it. Simply shout out yes or no before I reveal the answer. Number 1. A man and a woman both get drunk and agree to have sex. However, once the woman arrives at the man's house...
Oh, wait, they get drunk first and then agree to sex? Yeah, I don't know. No, that's not... Okay, yeah, I can see why that's great. Okay, I can see why that's great. Okay, you're supposed to give consent before, right? Like, if you're gonna be having drunk smacks, okay? Fuck. Sex. Alright, I say smacks because I don't know if it's, like, censored on YouTube or not. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But, like, yeah, if you're gonna be having drunk smacks, like, yeah, I don't know. You should agree upon it when you're sober, right? Like, even ethically speaking, right? But she's talking about UK law, okay, specifically.
She falls unconscious due to her intoxicated state. The man has sex with her anyway. Ready with your answer? It's yes. Under English law, this is considered because the woman's intoxicated state has removed her ability to reverse consent. In England, any earlier agreement is irrelevant once capacity is lost.
Just say smacks because it's funny, okay. Also, guys, don't forget to like the stream and donate, okay? I love you guys. You guys are great, okay? Yeah, just a quick reminder, okay? Thank you.
And where a person is unconscious, they are presumed not to consent, and the defendant is presumed to know this. Number 2. A man and a woman are having marital problems. It's been a while since they had sex. The woman's husband tells her, if you don't have sex with me right now, I'm going to file for divorce. He has a consistent pattern of threatening divorce if his wife does not have sex with him. You ready with your answer? It's a yes. A repeated pattern.
Oh yeah, because that would be coercion, right? Like in this case, it would be coercion. You're trying to coerce the other person by threatening them with something else, right? Okay, yeah.
Pattern of threatening divorce for refusal can amount to coercion that negates consent.
You know what? I'm just going to become a lawyer in Britain, okay? I'm going to start my new career as a British lawyer, okay? Boom.
Meaning that any apparent agreement may be legally invalid, and the act can constitute. The coercion is compounded where the threat of divorce operates within some kind of context, a context like a strongly anti-divorce community, dependency over children, or even immigration vulnerability, such that refusal carries cascading social, legal, economic consequences, effectively eliminating any genuine ability to say no. Number 3, and this is the last one. A man and a woman agree to have sex on the condition that a condom is worn. Halfway through the act, the man secretly takes off the condom and continues to have sex with the woman.
Oh. So stealthing, right? Like, okay. I mean, that would be... Ooh. Is this grape under UK law? I mean, so far all the answer seems to be yes, right? Like she's doing this thing where she is outlining all situations in which these are all like yes, right? Well, I'm assuming this is also yes, that stealthing is considered to be legally grape in this one.
Who only found out later that this occurred. You ready with your answer? It's yes, because consent is conditional, and where a person agrees to sex only on the condition that a condom is worn, deliberately removing it invalidates that consent, meaning that the act occurs with...
Okay, I wonder if this applies in any situation, right? Like let's just say that somehow you got into bed with a trans person, but the trans person never said that they were trans, and they said that they never said that whether or not they have a penis, and everyone just thought that, oh yeah, well, I'm just gonna have regular sex, right? Well, in that case, would that be like, how would what would that be? I don't know. I'm assuming it wouldn't apply. The reason why I think it wouldn't apply is because there was not a conditional established beforehand, right? There was nobody who was like actually making sure enough, right? Like you actually have to make sure enough, no? Like
without consent under the Sexual Offences Act. If you have committed any of these acts, that fact pattern can amount to. If you have admitted to committing any of these acts, you have admitted to a fact pattern that can amount to. If you believe any of these acts do not constitute, that means you are, might have, or may in the future meet the statutory bar for a conviction. If you believe any of these acts are okay if you do them to a spouse, that means you might have or may in future meet the statutory bar for a conviction. It's very important that your audience understands this to protect them, because many men don't want to be perpetrators, and nobody wants to be a victim. These examples reflect.
You can say that, but if the condition exists, the principle holds, right? I think the condition has to be previously agreed upon, right? So I'm assuming if the trans person says that they don't have a penis and they're not trans, right? And the other person says, okay, then let me have sex with you. But then later it turns out that this person did actually, I don't know how you would even hide it. I think that's impossible to, that's probably impossible to happen in the first place, because that just seems like such an absurd scenario, okay? But oh, well, I mean, another case, no, a more clear-cut case would be like, okay, well, a person has herpes, okay? And then they agree like, oh yeah, do you have any kind of illnesses, sexual illnesses? And the person says, no, I don't have any sexual illnesses, right? Essentially, they lied and they had sex. And it turns out that that person actually had herpes, right? Then I'm assuming in that case, it would be grape, yeah. So yeah. Outside of California, Washington State, and Maine, stealthing isn't illegal. This is a sad mark. I honestly don't know whether or not to, because that depends on the punishment, right? I don't think I don't think that stealthing should be treated the same way as like rape. But like if you stealth, I don't know if it should be treated with like a 20-year sentence, right? Makes sense. Like that seems weird to me. If you don't mention you have herpes and give someone herpes, I'm pretty sure that's still a crime, not necessarily grape. But yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that there can be several degrees of what can be considered like whatever, right? Like this shouldn't be this, like when it comes to nuanced situations, it really shouldn't just be, oh, well, there's only this one thing and it's whether or not you cross this line. If you cross this line, 20 years. If you don't cross this line, 0 years, right? Like I think that's silly, right? So obviously we're talking about like 1st degree grape, 2nd degree grape, 3rd degree grape, 4th degree grape, right? Like there has to be like different degrees of grape that we have to like ascertain, right? It's not classified as grape, but it's classified as a form of SA. Yeah, exactly. So SA in law and grape in law are defined as two different things, right? So yeah.
A broader legal principle that agreement is tied to the specific circumstances in which it is given. And it's about possessing the freedom and the ability to say no before something happens to you. Consent is never indefinite. This is why the argument that agreement at one moment implies permission later, even in the context of marriage, gets you in some seriously hot water. And it's why Rachel Wilson presents herself as an antidote to the statements covered, but her comments are, unfortunately, extraneous to the argument I'm making in this video, and arguments I made on Kyla's live stream. The suggestion that if a wife says she has granted permanent, irrevocable, irretractable consent to her body, then any criticism of her husband's actions must be defamatory legally does not follow, because the law doesn't see irrevocable consent as a real thing, ever. So let's talk about defamation law. In English defamation law, the court...
This is another thing that I would disagree immediately with Andrew Wilson, okay? So Andrew Wilson thinks that once you get married, then therefore that implies that you have consent forever, right? Wrong. Yeah.
Asks whether the statement complained of falls within one of the recognized statutory defenses. Let's go with the honest opinion defense here. Under Section 3 of the Defamation Act, a defendant has a defense if 3 conditions are satisfied. Firstly, the statement complained of was an opinion, not a statement of verifiable fact. Secondly, the opinion indicated the basis on which it was made. Thirdly, an honest person could have held that opinion based on the facts that existed at the time. The third requirement is crucial. The law does not ask whether the opinion is universally accepted or whether everyone would agree with it. It asks whether a reasonable person could reach that conclusion based on the underlying facts. Now, if someone publicly describes in a very long recorded discussion completing sex with a partner while she is asleep or unconscious due to alcohol.
Okay, so now she's talking about defamation. She's now talking about the defamation part, which is like the main part, right? Yeah, okay. I mean, all of this just makes sense. Like, I'm sorry, like all of this just straight up makes sense to me. Like, I don't really have like it doesn't sound like UK has any crazy laws in regards to both grape and defamation. Yeah.
Alcohol consumption, justifying this at any point with an outdated marital consent narratives, those statements form part of the factual basis on which listeners may form opinions. And Andrew, because you cannot stop tweeting, you keep building that case over and over and over. Where the opinion expressed by a commentator is clearly
Right, so she's essentially saying that since Andrew Wilson keeps on digging himself further and further into a hole, like that stuff could just be evidence that is against him, right? Like that stuff can be used against him because he's essentially digging himself into a hole and like you're just being stupid and retarded, right? Even if his wife says she's cool with it, that doesn't exonerate him. If you kidnap someone and brainwash them into liking grape, their statement doesn't exonerate it. That's right, yeah, because otherwise grooming is legally allowed, right? You have to assume that the victim is not of right state of mind or they're under threat or like whatever, right? So like I think that if they deny the grape or the grooming, I think that shouldn't be taken as anything. But if they affirm the grape or the grooming, then I think that that's probably going to be used as like evidence against, right? As in like on one end, if you deny it happening, then we can't say anything, to be honest. And if it's yes, then it's yes, right? Yeah, or no, then it's no, right?
tied to those statements. In other words, where the reasoning is
also, editors, clip.
explicitly explained, which it demonstrably was, then the honest opinion defense becomes extremely strong because it satisfies that first premise of the defense. And as I continue to make clear, even if your bride states that she personally views your conduct as consensual, that does not automatically invalidate the legal analysis behind the opinion because the law does not recognize permanent marital consent. Rachel's subjective feelings, they are her own. But the CPS in England doesn't ask a victim for permission to define what a crime is. They look at whether the elements.
My brain is melting. How is it melting? What are you confused about? I think that she's been clear about like all of this. I think that it can be like confusing at times, but it's not too bad, right?
Of the statute were met. But before I continue, I do want to speak to Rachel directly. Just for a moment here. I don't expect a kind response, but that doesn't matter to me because you are an adult woman, 2 decades my senior, who has made a series of decisions, and I'm not here to talk down to you. Because my point isn't that your experience doesn't matter. It does. And that's why the law operates how I've outlined. It exists precisely to protect people who have been conditioned not to see themselves as needing protection. But your loyalty to him, your loyalty to Andrew is yours, for nobody to take, and I can see that it's ever present. You, like every woman, have the right to autonomy, and that includes not being spoken over by women with positive intentions. Nobody should tell you what to do. Nobody. But they should remind you that your body was always yours first, that you deserve more, that you deserve better. What you do with those reminders are in your hands, and I can promise you that whatever you say in response to this, however vicious or hateful or bored or dismissive, will not be taken by me as a personal attack. And of course, you may never hear this, but that's okay too. I said it anyway. Allow me to continue. My analysis is based on the potential claimant's own recorded description of events, the legal definition of consent.
Yeah, this is like almost a perfect response. This is a really, really good response. I mean, to be fair, okay, like it is kind of cheating, all right? Like trying to beef with Andrew Wilson about a topic like this, okay, when he makes a stupid decision such as that, right, as like threatening to sue her in her own country, overseas, right? like, I don't know. That's just such a profoundly stupid thing to do. That she is essentially given a layup. Like, in my opinion, she's essentially given a layup. Like she has just been tossed a free win. That's the way that I see it. Okay, the way that I see it is that Andrew Wilson just basically handed her like the W, and then like went like, okay, now get to beat me. It's like, yeah, it's just stupid. Like, it's just stupid for him to do this. It's just so obviously retarded.
Under English law, and my interpretation of those facts as a speaker. This means that the present.
Also, you don't need to be an expert in British law, okay, to recognize how stupid this is. Okay, I'm not an expert on British law, and I have already guessed that he didn't really have a case. Okay, she comes in with the British laws, and she comes in with, I'm assuming, her own research into her own country's laws, okay, which seems to be well done. I don't know. She could be wrong. She could be lying or whatever the fuck, okay? But it seems like everything that she's been saying has been consistent with what I've been thinking about in terms of whether or not Andrew Wilson has a case, okay? What I'm saying is that, again, all right, this is all like, right? Yeah, that's, yeah, okay. Kev, wait, should Andrew go to jail for touching his sleeping wife? I'm confused though. If that is true, she is saying that that is a crime in UK law. Okay, if that's true, then that is a crime. Yeah, because that would be a textbook definition of rape in UK law. Yes, but in this case specifically, Andrew Wilson is threatening to sue her civilly in UK law over defamation, which he also does not have a case in.
Of disagreement from another participant does not transform that opinion into defamation, especially given that debates about the meaning of conduct described in recorded statements frequently involve precisely this kind of disagreement. If you can't take the aforementioned heat, Andrew, perhaps next time you should think twice before you describe over the course of over 18 minutes what, according to the quote woke feminist definition of consent, otherwise known as the statutory definition in England and Wales, was conduct that, under UK English consent law, many listeners would interpret as meeting the legal definition of. It makes your out-of-context argument appear ever more bizarre, given that it's unclear why a reasonable person would interpret a 20-minute video posted by your own close friend as out of context. Nor would they interpret explicit statements that marriage implies consent throughout a video posted in 2022 with Rob Noah as simply repeatedly occurring.
Oh, Rob Noah? God, she said it in the most British way possible, Rob Noah or some shit like that. It's so funny to see like a British accent pronouncing Rob's name. Rob Noah.
Out of context. Nor would they interpret explicit statements that marriage implies consent throughout a video posted in 2022 with Rob Noah as simply repeatedly occurring out of context. And this was a video where Rob asked you what would happen if your wife decided she didn't consent to sex, and you replied with, quote, "So an oath is worth nothing now." Courts take context seriously when evaluating defamation claims. You're right. But context does not mean that a speaker's own extended explanation of their position can be ignored. Listeners like me are not relying on a single isolated clip. They're hearing you describe your reasoning, your behavior, your own views, in your own words, both written and spoken, over an extended period of time. From what I can see, at least 3 years. Because the key legal point is not whether everyone agrees with my interpretation. Your community obviously agrees with you. The key question is whether the opinion was based on identifiable facts, honestly held, and capable of being reached by a reasonable person considering those facts. Your community are not representations of reasonable people. They are individuals rallying around a man who, in answer to a question about what happens if his wife doesn't consent, responds with, quote, "So an oath is worth nothing now." Who tweets that stealthily removing a condom isn't even close to. Who says a man asking for sex repeatedly has nothing to do with coercion or making no room for the existence of coercive control, who describes his wife as property he owns, who believes obedience is a necessity in marriage, defining it as doing whatever he wants whenever he wants, with a woman who has almost minimal input, who initiated sex with an intoxicated, unconscious woman, informed by his belief in an archaic doctrine surrounding marriage, and described it publicly with pride, despite unconsciousness requiring an extremely high burden when it comes to proving consent. which goes far, far beyond the irrevocable or implied, who then branded a woman who commented on those statements a false accuser and threatened to sue her. Andrew, my comments referred to statements you made publicly about sexual conduct within marriage. My point was that, based on those statements, I believe the behavior you described, due to a belief system that you hold surrounding marriage as a marker of automatic or implied consent, would meet the legal definition of under English law. I was not claiming personal knowledge of any criminal offence or asserting that a conviction had occurred. This would of course be incredibly unreasonable to interpret, given that my comments directly arose in response to a question about why I have declined invitations to appear on your show. Any claim of reputational harm would also...
Yeah, fuck that. Because like if you have a moral, I mean, it depends, right? Like I don't think you should appear for every debate, okay? Like if you I don't think you should be required to appear in every single like appearance or whatever, right? Like I think that if you truly believe in your ideas, then you should debate, okay? I think you should debate. I think debating is a good thing. I think that, you know, you should be allowed to argue for your ideas and contend with them, okay? You shouldn't only debate easy targets, all right? You should be able to contend with tougher targets, okay? But I think that Andrew is not somebody who is worth interacting with. Why? Because he's just simply bad faith. Okay, he doesn't, like, in my opinion, he's just kind of a grifter. Okay, like why the fuck would you ever hop on there? Okay, in order to argue for anything and give him more like publicity and attention, right? This guy's like a net negative for the world, right? Yeah, and of course he's gonna put you through the ringer, like in terms of trying to humiliate you and bully you into submission, and he does all of that shit, right? Yeah, fuck that shit, okay? Like, your time is better well spent, right?
Need to account for the fact that the clip was repeatedly amplified by you yourself, including edited reposts of my claims to a much larger audience than the original stream reached. In doing so, you actively leveraged the controversy to generate traffic within your community, which kind of complicates any suggestion that reputational harm arose from the original.
He's saying consent is a topic that doesn't need debate, so she won't debate him. Oh, I mean, that's a little silly. I think there's plenty of nuance. Like, in my opinion, there's plenty of nuance in which to elaborate upon the idea of consent and like where consent should be drawn. Like, for example, even the topic, is stealthing grape? Like, should that be defined as grape alone? Is like that alone can be like a 2-hour debate, right? But like obviously that would be a 2-hour debate between two people who are actually good faith, right? But between somebody and Andrew Wilson, like, you're not going to get anywhere with that debate, okay? Like, it's just going to be a waste of time, right?
Content. The statement itself was made during an informal live stream discussion, and I explicitly explained the basis of my view by referencing your own publicly available statements about consent. So good luck. You'll need it, because, as you similarly put it to me on Twitter, I'm a kind woman, not a particularly nice one. Throughout this video, I've taken behaviour that millions of women have experienced and that entire communities have been told is biblical, legally untouchable, normal, and shown methodically on the record that it isn't. This video is therefore not a response to some influencer beef thing. It's a resource for women and girls who have been told that their bodies belong to their husbands and boyfriends, that objecting to sex is breaking an oath, women who have never heard the words Section 74 or the case RVR, who don't know what coercive control is, who have been told that obedience is a function of a healthy relationship. It is the language that they've been denied.
To be very fair, okay, I think that, you know, social changes in society has come a really, really long way. Okay, I don't think anybody in the past like could have ever imagined that like feminism would come so far. Okay, and there's still like a long way to go. Okay, before lots of issues are still fixed. Okay, but I think it's worth celebrating the fact that generally speaking, like things are being talked about a lot, and a lot of things have already been codified into law. All right, like that is a massive, like, for example, I wish that trans people or even Black people had like the same level of some of the, like, I don't know, treatment in this. I don't know, like yeah, it's one of these things where it's like we're getting there really fast. Okay, like, yeah, like there's not really all that much left to give. in terms of legal jurisdiction, there's nothing left to give anymore outside of abortion and stuff, right? Like in the United States at the very least. There what else legally, right? It's illegal to discriminate off of gender for housing. It's illegal to discriminate off of gender for jobs, right? It's illegal to discriminate off of gender, right? Like in many cases, right? So like what else legally do we even need? Like what else do we need to codify, right? There's not much anymore that we need to codify, right? I think the rest of the struggle is a culture challenge. I think that's a culture challenge. Okay? I truly do think so. Okay? Not a legal challenge, not a legislative challenge. It's a culture challenge. Okay? Like as in like microaggressions, little snide comments that allude to someone's sexuality, right? Saying that, oh yeah, well, you sure know a lot about being in the kitchen, don't you? Right? Comments like that, right? All of these things are cultural challenges. Okay? I mean, that still has a long way to go, but in my opinion, like in terms of legislation, I'm actually shocked that we have this much already. Okay? Abortion is the only topic in which I think that the United States is behind on in terms of feminism. Okay, like abortion is probably the only thing, but irregardless, whatever.
Language that you and everyone who came to your defense have denied them. As I've made clear, I'm not so familiar with US law. It is not my...
Also, can you say that she is not consenting to a debate with Andrew Wilson? And Andrew Wilson is just simply taking the debate for granted? Makes you think.
My country. What I do know is that in England and Wales, a person's private beliefs about what the law should be do not change what the law actually is. Your grandiose sense of entitlement does not somehow overrule the long-standing legal principle, often summarized as ignorance of the law is no defense. If someone believes that tax laws do not apply to them, that belief does not make tax evasion legal, even if they think they have a special divine right not to pay them.
I mean, you like, I think again, the state of mind only matters in terms of leniency, right? You would still be found guilty, right? Like whether or not you knew that this was legal or not, like you would still be found guilty, okay? But it's just that the judge will probably go, well, I was gonna give you like 2 years, but I'm just going to reduce it to 1 year because you actually did not know about this. Like, it doesn't seem like there was any precursor knowledge about any of this. And I can totally see how anybody would have missed this. So I'm only going to give you 1 year, right? But if there's like enough planning and deliberation and enough like intricate, like shit behind it to the point where like planning seems to be like the only, like, thing that you could have done in regards to breaking law or something, then it's like, okay, well, it seems like you actually were aware as to like actually plan this far at the very least, because the only reason you could have planned this far if you knew that you could cover up something that was strictly forbidden, so therefore which implies that you knew that this was illegal, so therefore I'm going to sentence you to 2 years, right? That is pretty much the gist of it, ain't it? Corporal punishment has been classified based on empirical evidence as abuse, which has been endorsed by the American Pediatric Association and the WHO. What is corporal punishment? What is that? Is that like slapping your hand with a ruler or some shit? Like, is that what it is?
If someone believes that speed limits are unnecessary, that belief does not make driving at excessive speed lawful, even if they think
basically she's saying facts don't care about your feelings, right?
God has bestowed upon them a particularly fast car. If someone believes marriage implies consent, that belief does not make their interpretation of marriage and sexual access legal, even if the
physical discipline. Oh, okay, all right, that's abuse. Yes.
Individual's wife states that she has granted unconditional, irrevocable access to her body on the same legally outdated basis. This is why, under the Sexual Offences Act, the question is not merely whether a defendant personally believes consent is woke, because marriage implies consent. Bible bashing about a forever oath would never satisfy a court, at least not in England, because the legal system has explicitly rejected the idea that marriage creates ongoing sexual permission. The broader principle is therefore quite simple. Individuals are free to hold whatever personal beliefs they wish about relationships or marriage or consent. But those beliefs do not redefine a reason.
Basically, you're allowed to have opinions even if they're retarded, okay? But just because you think that they are right doesn't mean that the system will deliberately like reject you and go like, no, your opinion is retarded. It doesn't line up with the law. So therefore, we sentence you to mental retardation and your punishment, right?
Reasonable person's interpretation
Oklahoma is still pushing for it in schools for disabled children. Well, that depends on how far it's gotten, right? Like, is it passing in like the state government like really hard or something?
of your statement.
Because if so, that's pretty scary, I suppose.
They do not redefine the law. They do not shield you from people like me. And for this, Andrew, I am sorry. Nothing further.
I'm initiating a campaign to make public statements made by a person in an intimate relationship that would constitute evidence of coercive or controlling behavior, evidence of an aggravated form of the existing offense. Public statements made by a person in an intimate relationship that would constitute evidence of an aggravated form of the existing offense. Oh, okay. So this is essentially saying that if you confess in public, right, to the behavior, okay, if there is a case pressed against you, then therefore that statement that you have said, right, in earnest, should be counted as evidence against you. But I thought this would already be the case, right? I thought this would already be like a thing. No? I guess maybe UK law doesn't have it. Because if you commit a crime here in the United States, like first degree murder or something, right? I'm pretty sure the prosecutor would use what you have said against you, right? Like what you say is going to be used against you, right? Like they're not gonna take kindly to that, to the fact that even if you start joking around, oh yeah, I want to murder this person, right? And then you end up murdering this person, yeah, that's going to be used against you. That makes sense. Well, you can say it privately, but when you put it online, oh, public statements. Okay, public statements is public statements. Oh, because like you could be doing it performatively in front of the audience, right? Oh, okay, I understand. Could this be abused? Because I'm wondering, like, because right now I'm wondering, because obviously we want like we want people who have actually broken the crime to be punished, but I wonder if any innocent people can be caught in the crossfires. Okay, so let's just say we have a comedian who makes like really edgy jokes, okay, and then their wife gets murdered. So naturally, the prime suspect becomes the comedian themselves, okay. But one of the jokes that they have said in the past is something about murdering their wife if she forgot to place some object somewhere, right? Like a very casual, like edgy joke. Could that then be used against them in order to go after this person? Because in my opinion, that wouldn't be enough evidence. In my opinion, like in my opinion, that shouldn't be used as evidence, right? That wouldn't seem right to do because like yeah, even though like in like most of these cases it's always the spouse that murders the spouse, right? I don't think that public statement should have been used because it was said publicly in front of the audience. I don't know, because it was clearly a joke. Or maybe the prosecutors and the jury and the judge, maybe they all see it. Maybe they wouldn't use it in the first place because they would already see that as like a joke, like it's obviously a comedian joke or whatever. But what if you say it in a podcast? Like what if it's a serious podcast and you were satirically playing a character and people couldn't tell whether or not you were serious or joking, right? Like you're hidden behind 5 layers of irony and you don't know whether or not you're serious or joking. Like you're intermixing the two. Could then that be used? Like would they be able to understand like the 5 layers of irony? Yeah, there's just so much like I don't know. There's just so much. There's just so much, man. Like this is. I mean, maybe like in principle, like principally speaking, maybe I would support this. But yeah, I understand why she's doing this. Obviously, because Andrew Wilson has basically publicly confessed to being a rapist. In that case, yeah, like fuck me, dude. Like, I mean, if you say so, like, right? Like, if you say so, fuck it, right? Like, I mean, fuck. Like, what else is there to say? I wouldn't care if Andrew Wilson is convicted because it does seem like he is a guilty motherfucker, okay, in my opinion. But, you know, I'm thinking about anybody who is like a good-natured person who doesn't really deserve any of this trouble coming to them, and then somebody might be caught in the crossfires. I don't know, okay? This is why it requires there to be some kind of elaboration, right? Or any kind of, like, it requires precedence, right? Yeah. They do examine the context and patterns of behavior. Yes, they do. You know, this is one of the things that people kind of misinterpret about law. One of the things that people misinterpret is oh yeah, like laws are really autistic, and laws are really autistic, so therefore you shouldn't be going down these like various trees or whatever the fuck, like in terms of crossing the line or something, right? No, that's not true. There's plenty of nuance to be had in rulings. There's plenty of nuance to be had in legal interpretation. Whether or not something is reasonable is actually used a lot in law. Okay, whether or not something is obvious is actually used a lot in law, right? Because that's used to establish gross negligence, right? Because if you expect an adult to know something and they didn't do something and that caused harm to another person, they use that against you because they expect you to know this thing, right? They expect you to have common sense, right? If you don't have, if you have common sense and you're like fit of mind and you still did something like that, then therefore you have no excuse and therefore you should be held, you should be held like more guilty, right? You look more guilty at the very least, right? Yeah, people think that law is like this very autistic thing where it has to cross this threshold or it doesn't cross this threshold. That's not true. Okay. There's plenty of nuance to be had. Yeah, reasonable judgment is central to legal persecution. That's correct. Yes. Which is why like any kind of good lawyer, any good lawyer worth their salt can never, ever tell you whether or not somebody is going to win a case or not. Okay. I don't think it should ever be the case in which a lawyer tells you an opinion like, oh yeah, Stephen is going to win their case or Stephen is going to lose his case, right? You shouldn't ever say that because how a court interprets things, how the prosecutor interprets things, how the lawyer interprets things, that all matters. How the jury interprets things, these things all matter, okay? You can say it looks good, you can say it looks bad, you can say it looks ridiculous, you can say it looks really bad, or you can say, oh well, I've never seen anything like this before. These are all things that are ethical to say. However, what I think is not ethical to say is if you specifically make a determinate outcome, like you try to predict an outcome, all right, and you're certain that this thing will happen, right? In my opinion, that is unethical, right? Like obviously, but yeah. Yeah. Except for legal mindset, that guy can see the future apparently. Like, didn't that guy like apparently I've heard that person ran off to Bangkok, Bangkok, but that person ran off to Bangkok specifically because that person could not like that person was trying to escape the debtors, right? Like he owed debt. He didn't want to pay the debt, so he was just he was essentially trying to avoid shit, right? Is that true? If that's true, then that's very funny. Okay, and fuck that guy. So I don't feel bad for him. So yeah, good memes. Okay, I would say yeah. Okay, is there anything else? What's this music? What the fuck? Creepy as shit. In simple terms, okay, if an individual privately messages their partner, "You're my property," that message can form part of a criminal case against them in England and Wales under coercive control. Oh, yeah, okay, never mind. This is reasonable. Yeah, this is reasonable, right? Like this is reasonable to me. This is reasonable to me. Never mind. Okay, I support it. Right? Like this seems reasonable to me. Okay, this seems reasonable to me. Okay, this specifically. Yeah. The kink community is devastated. Well, obviously the context will matter, right? assuming the context matters. Okay, inshallah, mashallah, okay, and all that. Glory be to Allah and all that. If the same individual tweets it publicly to their followers, current law has no specific mechanism to treat that as worse, despite the fact that a public statement does something the private message cannot in recruiting an audience to reinforce the abuse. Okay, but obviously context matters, right? Okay, I'm assuming that in this case, context matters. I have to assume in this case that context has to matter here, right? Like you can just go like, well, this person's making an edgy joke, and so therefore that could be interpreted whatever, right? Like, okay. It can make leaving feel impossible. Statements that would be criminalized if made privately should not escape liability by virtue of being declared publicly. Broadcasts of coercive control must be treated as an aggravated form of existing offense under Section 76 and carry an enhanced sentence. Okay. I will be colloquially referring to this proposed amendment as Rachel's Law. Like Rachel Wilson law, Rachel's Law, really? You know what? If this happens, it'll be really funny, so I support it, okay? If this happens, it'll be really funny, and I'll support it, okay? Simple as. If you are experiencing areas such as domestic abuse or family law, and want to help the campaign, find my contact form in the description below. You know what I'm gonna do? I think I'm gonna try to reach out to her for an interview. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try to reach out to her for an interview. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's it then.